Welcome back to another stop along the pathway to May 7th, the road to the Kentucky Derby. This week takes a stop in Tampa Bay at Tampa Bay Downs with the Sam F. Davis. This is another 10-point opportunity in the early stages of the road to the Kentucky Derby. Back with me to hopefully find the winner this week. We didn't last week in the Holy Bull. Scott Shapiro. Scott, how's it going?
Going well, Nick. Another solid race. I thought the Sam F. Davis, as it often does, came up pretty competitive. Yeah, we didn't quite come through in the Holy Bull with White Barrio, but that horse ran well. Our two horses didn't run poorly either. I think they both have chances to have a pretty strong 3-year-old campaign. But yeah, the Sam F. Davis hasn't necessarily produced a Kentucky Derby winner, but some solid winners, including last year Candyman Rocket. Shout out to you picking Candyman Rocket on top on the TwinSpires app in his comeback race last weekend. But yeah, some good looking runners have won this race in the past, and man, a lot of speed in here. No,
it really does look like that's what I was going to start the conversation with. Is it looks like almost every runner in here wants to be forwardly placed, probably conservatively at least 9 of them, and I think that factored in pretty heavily into our handicapping. And I guess we'll start by saying I guess who each of us like, and then we can talk about the favorite who we both didn't pick.
Yeah, I landed on God of Love, not a horse that I love in here, and not one of the horses that I expect to really be the best 3-year-old as we move towards the first Saturday in May. But I just think the race really shapes up well for this Son of Cupid. Now, the wild card will be whether he takes to the main track, to the dirt, if you will, has raced primarily over the all-weather surface up at Woodbine with one race over the turf and put forth a strong late run in the Grade 3 Gray last time out. But I just think this race has a big chance to collapse. And with 10-1, I thought God of Love was worth taking a chance. Lukewarm top selection, though. How about you?
Yeah, I actually thought about picking God of Love, and this show wouldn't be as much fun if I did. But I love how he rallied into a slow pace last time out. Obviously, the variable of handling dirt is the big concern, as you mentioned. I think you're going to get enough of a price to really, facilitate trying. I went to Strike Hard on the outside. I thought Strike Hard actually ran a much better race in the Mucho Macho Man than it looks on paper. Yes, he went off 4 to 5 in there and was expected to win, but in watching the replay of that race, it's pretty clear that Junior Alvarado wanted to save ground for as long as possible and follow simplification, and it just didn't work out. Probably a little bit because of his fault, a little bit not because of his fault. He ended up getting shuffled out. He had to make a re-rally. He didn't finish with a ton of gusto. I wish he had maybe put a little bit more of a scare into simplification, but I think having to distribute so much energy at different points during the race probably worked against him in the end. And like you, I wanted a horse who was going to sit back and make one run, because you could choose from any variety of speed horses in here, none of which really offer a tremendous amount of appeal. I mean, I would say that now that each of us have talked about who we like, the horse to discuss is Classic Causeway, who comes in off a second place finish in the Kentucky Jockey Club. And a lot of people who are interested in looking at, who horses beat and what kind of races they're coming out of are going to say, wow, White Barrio finished third in there and then came back and won the Holy Bull with a hugely improved performance. And I think that's going to lead a lot of people in his direction. I was surprised by the change in tactics that day. I was also surprised at how well he did with the change of tactics. Where did you land on Classic Causeway?
I think he's the most talented horse in the race. If you made me put a futures wager, not without maybe, odds in mind, but just the likeliest horse in the race to win the Kentucky Derby, to make a run in the Kentucky Derby, it would definitely be Classic Causeway. But the question is, drawn between other speeds, what kind of trip is he going to be able to work out? Now, Brian Lynch did talk a little openly going into that Kentucky Jockey Club about wanting to rate. I don't think it was the right decision that day, but maybe that learning experience is going to benefit him in this spot, because if Irad Ortiz Jr. can sit just off the pace, kind of in a pocket, and let these horses go at it, get first run on horses like our top selections, Classic Causeway could definitely win this race. But that's a big if, especially off the freshman where he might be a little bit keen out of the gate. So Classic Causeway, to me, a horse that I think, still could be the likeliest winner, but at 3-1 on the line and expecting to be the favorite, it just wasn't for me at that price in this spot. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's a great assessment, and I agree. I do think Irad is a really good fit, one of the better riders around at getting horses to relax. And I think as far as somebody who can take a hold of him and maybe get him to settle in behind horses, as you mentioned, I do think that seems like a very good fit. The horse immediately to his outside, Golden Glider, is 2 for 2 and won a one other than allowance race. It was a prep for this last month at Tampa. He's going to get a lot of support as well. My concern here was he looks a little slow speed figure wise on pretty much any measurable speed figure. And I don't think relative to his chances of winning, you're going to get any value at all.
I completely agree. A horse I took a long look at, watched those replays a couple of times, trying to make a case for him, maybe why he can get faster. But he kind of had things his way, and it was a visually impressive effort in that first level allowance event that you referenced in early January. But just too slow to win this race. He's going to really have to take a step forward, hence why I went to his stablemate. I want to ask you about Make It Big. You follow that circuit at Gulfstream, although he does come out of the Springboard Mile at Remington. Thought he was pretty impressive that day, winning by a half length and kind of pulling away in the end and having a lot of run. You think this is a two-turn horse that can relax, or where do you put him in the mix?
I think my big worry with him is this is an enormous class test. These horses are a lot better than anything he's faced. And, clearly in the Florida bred races, I mean, he made short work of those fields. He was, I think laborious is the word I would use in the Springboard Mile. He really worked hard to get that win. And I understand that you're supposed to give December 2-year-olds a little bit more credit for going the mile. They didn't do it very quickly. He did get a good buyer speed figure. Some of the other speed figures didn't come up quite as fast. And the also rans from that race have not exactly dazzled since. That was my concern. I thought this was a situation where you were probably going to have to take too short a price on a horse that really doesn't. I wouldn't put him among the chief win candidates for me, but I would say, I'll be far from surprised if he overperforms my expectation, which I think he's probably nothing more than a placing chance.
Okay, good information there. And then one other horse to mention before we complete Trademark is a horse that I don't know necessarily if he has to have the lead. He was ridden aggressively by Florent Giroux back in that first level allowance win on November 27th. I remember thinking that 12-horse field was an absolutely wide open betting race. I thought Trademark was amongst the chief contenders that day at Churchill Downs, but he got hammered and kept getting bet in the wagering, which surprised me. And he ran huge. I mean, he dominated a field. Now, it hasn't come back to be a great field, but it wasn't a horrible field either. So I think if he can find a way to relax a little bit off the pace, he's another one that, could run well here. I think Vicky Oliver, probably a trainer that you want to see a race off the bench, but that horse has some talent and impressed me at Churchill this fall.
I know that my spring would look better if I had all the money back that I bet on Hidden Stash for Vicky Oliver on the Tampa road to the Triple Crown last year. So she's definitely been down this road before. Trademark did, of course, beat Red Run, who came back and won the Bob Bork Texas Turf Mile at Sam Houston in his next start. The only other one that I was going to bring up, there were two horses drawn towards the outside in this field that have each at times shown the type of ability you might need to win a race like this. And I'm talking about Shipstational and Howling Time. Shipstational is actually a multiple stake winner already, having beaten New York Breds on a couple of occasions. My worry was that in the Sleepy Hollow last time out in late October, he worked very hard to get the mile with a very favorable pace setup. I'm extremely concerned this horse doesn't want to go anywhere beyond a mile.
Yeah, that was my read on Shipstational. Looked like more of a one-turn horse, also a classic. Does have two very fast Brisnet speed ratings in those wins, a pair of 101s at Belmont Park back in the fall of last year. But for me, also a horse that I think is more of a one-turn animal. Howling Time, it'll be interesting. Very aggressive ride in the Kentucky Jockey Club as the 2-1 second choice that day under jockey Joe Talamo. You would think from the outside draw and knowing the amount of speed signed on in here, they would probably try to settle just off the pace. But if he does, perhaps gets back to that street sense effort, maybe he can be a player in here. But I was pretty underwhelmed by his performance when we last saw him in Louisville.
Yeah, it was supposed to be better based on the street sense. And I was wondering similarly if maybe he just got the wrong ride, maybe the wrong trip, and maybe he's better sitting back to make that one run. This is definitely a field that's going to set up well for somebody that does sit well off the paces. It looks as if, like we were saying before, there probably are somewhere between 7 and 10 speed horses.
Yes, no doubt. I think it'll be key for Joe Talamo to take different tactics if Howling Time wants to be competitive against this bunch in the first start of his 3-year-old campaign.
That's a wrap for the Sam F. Davis. Good rundown of the entire field. Scott Shapiro will be with you next week to cover the Risen Star on location in New Orleans. I'm sure he's very excited about beignets and crawfish as we get into the championship series on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Make sure you are following along at TwinSpires.com. And until we meet next time, best of luck.